The Metroidvania genre has had no shortage of quality indie releases in 2024. Games such as Animal Well, Bow, Path of the Teal Lotus, and Biomorph left critics and audiences impressed with their intricate map designs, fast and fluid combat, and lovely visual aesthetics. But there have been disappointments too. Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder was a bit of a letdown for me personally, and the psychedelic world of Ultros left me downright frustrated. While the genre remains popular, indie developers are needing to find different ways to innovate on the existing formula in order to stand out in a now crowded space. This means offering something new and exciting while maintaining the spirit of what fans love about these games. AWAKEN, Astral Blade, coming to us from Dark Pigeon Games and ES Digital Games, is the latest Metroidvania release attempting to capture the attention of indie gaming fans. But did this title awaken my optimism for the genre going forward? Or does it die by the blade? Let's find out in our full review. Real quick, support cutting-edge independent content over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames and join the fight for indie visibility. You'll gain Discord access, early and ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every video we produce, and more. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. AWAKEN Astral Blade begins by having players select between two difficulty options. There's an accessible story mode for those seeking an easier experience, or a default normal setting. Players can also look forward to an unlockable hardcore mode for an additional challenge should they complete the game on normal. Regardless of which option you choose, the game does a nice job of adjusting to your struggles. Should you die repeatedly on a particular section, you will be offered an easier difficulty level, and eventually be allowed to boost your powers through a rookie mode that temporarily gives you both an attack and health advantage based on how many times you die. I always appreciate a game offering accessibility options, so it was nice to see the developers offer players a lifeline should it be needed. And need it they may, as AWAKEN Astral Blade starts out deceptively easy, even on the default difficulty, but eventually puts up a greater resistance. The majority of my struggles came the way of the game's multi-staged boss encounters, but your mileage may vary depending on your skill level. It is unlikely anyone will be challenged by AWAKEN's narrative, however, which feels painfully generic. It's a tale as old as time where a robotic girl is created by a doctor in order to make the world a better place. In this case, Dr. Hervius creates Tanya and tasks her with exploring the Dark Mist Rainforest, which is located on a massive island. She is to find a missing advance team and locate Carpus energy sources that are causing plants and wildlife to mutate into monstrous abominations. Now, one could forgive a played-out storyline if it offered decent writing, but sadly that isn't the case here. Instead, the dialogue is bland and the plot twists can be spotted a mile away. It's unlikely anyone will become invested in the characters of this world, or even give the story a second thought after completing what should be a roughly 10 to 12 hour campaign, depending on skill level. Narrative shortcomings aside, it is clear that Dark Pigeon Games understand how to execute a solid Metroidvania gameplay loop. Here they opt to play things relatively safe and stick to what the genre is best known for. The game features a large map to explore, pretty good combat with a small offering of different weapons, various upgrade systems, and plenty of boss encounters. Slap me if you've heard this one before, but at the least, AWAKEN Astral Blade executes on the basics well enough. Your goal is the same as any other Metroidvania: complete objectives through action and exploration and reach the end game. And despite its narrative shortcomings, the developer has stated that there are multiple endings here, adding a little bit of replayability to go along with that hardcore mode. And thankfully, the island is a beautiful place to explore with varied locations. From misty forests to caverns and laboratories, each area of the map feels distinct and alive. Backgrounds thrive, whether it be small details such as waterfalls or the moon off in the horizon. Creatures, much like an old vegan diet, are often plant-based, almost always interesting to look at, though admittedly the game could have done with a bit more enemy variety. Still, what's here is lovely, and while the boss encounters aren't always thrilling to take part in, the art design of each one of these creatures is very impressive. Put simply, Awaken Astral Blade is gorgeous. My only real complaint from a visual standpoint would be pointed at Tanya herself. In motion, her animations can appear a bit stiff, and when standing still, her proportions don't seem to match what we see in the portrait art. It almost feels like two entirely different artists worked on her design and didn't coordinate properly. Combat in Awaken Astral Blade feels relatively fast and responsive. You begin the game with an engineering sword, but eventually earn more weapons such as a scythe, though I wish you had earned these weapons sooner. I would argue the game could have also benefited from more weapon variety in totality, but I digress. These weapons are easily cycled between and can eventually be upgraded via an in-game currency that also allows you to enhance Tanya's skills and abilities. While I don't mind having the one main currency to upgrade just about everything, it did make progression feel like a bit of a slog at times. Hours into my adventure, I felt like I still hadn't unlocked as much as I would have liked, despite killing just about every enemy on screen and doing plenty of exploring. And because there are multiple skill trees to work on, it can be a little bit of a tough decision as to where you want to spend your points. Regardless, Awaken's combat engine and upgrade systems are perfectly serviceable at the end of the day. Outside of her standard attack, Tanya can also parry, dodge, run, and perform combos that dish out additional damage. She also has a devastating special attack that can be earned through battling enemies, and finishing moves that can be utilized on mortally wounded foes. Healing is similar to a Souls-like where you have a set amount of potions that can be activated with the push of a button. I say the word Souls-like, but fear not, as this is a mostly forgiving experience. This is due to the game having plenty of save areas scattered across its world that restore your health entirely while acting as checkpoints. Death also doesn't offer any major penalty. Save points are also where you'll do the vast majority of your upgrading. So yes, while there are some pretty major difficulty spikes in some of the boss encounters, the game does its best to adjust to your skill level, and overall you'll be able to get through it. A common frustration in Metroidvania games is the amount of time that can be spent aimlessly wandering corridors, unsure of where to go next. This wasn't the case here, as your goals are clearly defined and well labeled at all times. This can make the game feel a bit more structured when compared to other releases within this genre, while still offering plenty of optional exploration. Traveling between locations is a breeze too, with a fast travel system that unlocks about halfway through your adventure. Outside of combat and exploration, Awaken Astral Blade will occasionally attempt to mix things up. There were a few puzzles to be solved, which, while not amazing, were a welcome change of pace. Chase sequences also occur from time to time, which, much like the puzzles, are simply okay. While none of its gameplay shifts are wildly successful, I can appreciate the developer attempting to add a bit of variety to the game. As far as sound design is concerned, the music in Awaken Astral Blade is a bit forgettable. While I enjoyed the opening menu music, a lovely little ballad, the rest of the soundtrack lacks personality. Many of these tracks feature abstract synths and light melodies that drift off into the background. Sound effects are also nothing special, though there are some decent touches, such as the pitter-patter of Tanya's feet across the island's varied landscapes. The game does have a small bit of voice acting, which was presented in Chinese by default, but it is not fully voiced. In general, I found that the music and sound were a bit lacking when compared to the lovely visual design. Performance, on the other hand, was mostly great. Early on, I hit a couple frame rate snags, but a patch was released during the review process, and I didn't encounter them ever again. That said, I did hit a few janky spots where my screen would momentarily kinda glitch out, or the game didn't transition between new scenes perfectly. There was nothing game-breaking that I found, however, while playing, with the biggest bug being the incorrect button prompts being displayed on screen. While using an Xbox controller on my PC, I would often see PlayStation button prompts, and that threw my brain for a little bit of a loop. In the end, Awaken Astral Blade is a well-made Metroidvania release that doesn't attempt to rewrite the book. Its map is easy to understand and well designed, the visuals are quite beautiful, and the combat feels good despite a few balancing issues, mainly with some rather steep difficulty spikes during those boss encounters. Luckily, that particular issue is offset by the game featuring great accessibility options. While it doesn't do a whole lot to stand out from the crowd, and its narrative and sound design feel like missed opportunities, what's here should be enough to satisfy gamers that wish to add another solid Metroidvania game to their collections. It does what you've come to expect from the genre, and for a lot of people, that will be enough. Here at I Dream of Indie Games, we believe that games are so much more than a number, which is why we have our 3 Genie Lamp tier system, with a bronze lamp representing a good game with quite a few issues, a silver lamp for those great releases with just a few small nagging issues, and the elusive gold golden genie lamp of approval for those amazing indie releases that just have to be in your collection. We also have the rusty lamp for mediocre titles that have just a faint glimmer of hope, and the dreaded indie Krampus for those releases that you just have to avoid. But with all of that said, I am going to award AWAKEN Astral Blade the bronze genie lamp of approval.